no, then it was more of the adventure.
What, like, do you remember like meeting Brooke Shields for the first time? Like, what was your first impressions?
Well, it was very interesting because I never saw Pretty Baby. I knew about all of that, and the director had put a picture up over my. I lived on a boat for the first 2 weeks of shooting the picture, and then I moved to a tent on the island. Everybody lived in tents. I mean, there was, except for Brooke, they built a bure, a brick building with a thatch roof for the Nestor Almendros and Brooke, but everybody else lived in tents. I mean, that's how we lived, was on a platform in a tent for four and a
Wow.
half months. So I lived on a boat for 2 weeks before, and he put a picture of her over my bunk so I could fall in love with her before she came. But when she came, it was just all very sweet and innocent, and it was nice. And she's a beautiful girl. She's a very sweet girl, a very very sweet girl, and it was just really nice. And she was the closest to my age on the island, so it was nice in that way too.
I listened to you on Brooke's podcast, so I heard you guys kind of reminisce and go down memory lane. Like, do you have like just a high and a low from that experience? Like, just something that sticks out as like the high or the low, or both?
Well, like I said, it was a life experience, so it was more of a high than anything else. I mean, the uh, I guess the low was after, where I never hit that peak again, in that, as far as filmmaking goes. But at the same time, I'm very grateful. I mean, people come to LA and they come there to be actors and to be movie stars, and they want it so bad. And I'm very grateful. I was lucky to have grabbed that brass ring on the very first picture I ever did, and it thrust me into. Literally, there were places where I would go to do promotions for Columbia Pictures where I had my hair pulled, my shirt ripped. It was literally like the Beatles back then. It was insane. I've never seen anything like it in my life. So
Right.
there was, the lows were probably, well, I, you know what, I guess the low was never reaching that peak again for me in my career, but the high was I kind of ducked out to be a dad, and that's a whole another segment, I'm sure. But on the island itself, making the movie, um, I, I, I love camping out. I love scuba diving. I love the water. I met the coolest people. I don't know. It's hard to say that there were any real lows. I guess there's homesickness were the lows, but Columbia Pictures did send my mom and my brother out for a little bit, which was really nice. So that's a long time to be away when you're not used to. I was only 18, so I'd always been at home, and here all of a sudden, and I got that proverbial letter from mom about the first baby, because I'm the oldest, the first baby leaving the nest and all of that, and it was very, yeah, it was sweet. It was beautiful.
I have more to say about the highs and lows of the business, and that's a concept I love talking about. So I have more to say about that.
All right.
What was it like? You mentioned the nudity, like your first movie, like you guys, right? Like you're climbing trees and spearing fish, and like what was just like the nudity like of just like here you are? Like that's a whole different part of something. I mean, not everyone's first movie has all that nudity.
No, I didn't know the difference at the time, but the director did ask me, what do you think about being naked? And I said, well, I take a shower. I have no idea. I have no idea. Now I'll tell you that what really helped a lot was the Australians, because in Australia back at that time in the 80s, 70s and 80s, it was all topless beaches, and it was, they were very, America's very conservative, and in Australia and Europe they're a lot more open, so they were very open to that. And listen, if you don't make it a big deal, it's not a big deal. It's just everybody's got one or two or whatever it is. Everybody's got them, and it's not that big a deal. And that's more what I ended up learning about. I mean, even to this day, you'll never find me on a regular beach. Oh, I'm the one on the nude beach, man. You can't keep me my clothes on these days after that movie. but that's what it was about. It really encompassed freedom. It really encompassed the innocence. It really stripped away all of social, societal, uh, finger point, whatever drama that you put, it took all of that away. And here we were, just a bunch of people making this film as a family together on this island, and it made it worthwhile. Now, of course, there were the conversations of the obvious, which I'm going to say because nobody really asks about it, but I know they talk about it, is what happens if you get aroused in the middle of shooting or whatever else. I mean, it's a natural question. We're running around naked. And the director talked to me about that too, which was very normal, was very interesting. I thought it was a little weird and all. I mean, come on, man, whatever. But when you're doing it, he really cared. He really cared about us, and he really cared about the innocence. He really cared about it not being weird and not being anything where it was objectified or anything like that. He really wanted everybody to be comfortable and make it natural, and that's what he was going for. And I think that's what comes out of the film was that, because of the way he treated it.
What advice did he give you if you got aroused? And like, was that something you weren't even thinking of? And then now that you're having a conversation, like, man, you just added a whole nother layer to this that I didn't even think about.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. And it sticks in your mind, I guess. But he just said it's normal. He said if something like that, it's a normal reaction. It's okay. I mean, he really made everything okay. It never happened, just because there's a whole crew around and the whole thing, and it's action, okay, cut, so it wasn't anything that I ended up having to worry about. But it was a very interesting and serious conversation, and he really wanted to make sure that everybody understood, and it was especially for me, to make it that there's nothing that's going to be weird. We want this to be beautiful and innocent. I mean, it was really nice the way he approached everything.
So I mean, now you say you're always on the nude beach. Do you have your love of nude beaches? Do you attribute that to the Blue Lagoon?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Are you kidding? Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, like you said, like, especially what you just said, like the director tried to make it, there was nothing like strange, or it wasn't that type of environment. But then like the movie comes out, like, were you shocked at like kind of the reaction? Look, it made a ton of money. It was a huge hit and it's a huge iconic film. But like, were you shocked at that? Like, okay, wait, it's like two cousins and they're shipwrecked, and you were 18 and Brooke was 14, and they did have that narrative of like this movie has these undertones.
Yeah, it never crossed my mind. I
Were
mean,
you
I didn't.
shocked at like the fact that that was like the narrative in the public when it came out? Like, this isn't the movie we actually made.
Oh, for sure.